Iran needs to de-escalate badly.
Right.
They were badly defeated in this war, whatever they say. They know it. They need to get to a place where bombs are no longer falling on Iran so they can recalculate and decide how to go forward in the future.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to another episode of What's Really Happening. I'm Dr. Tad Schnaufer, the Strategy and Research Manager here at the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida. As always, we're joined by GNSI's Executive Director, retired Marine Corps General Frank McKenzie, as we explore global and national security issues. Today, we're going to discuss the aftermath of the 12-day war and the U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer. Welcome back, General.
Always good to be here, Tad.
So we were going to discuss the 12-day war, the recent U.S. strike on Iran and the aftermath of it. But what actually led us to this point? What sparked this, quote, 12-day war compared to the last year, a couple of years since the October attack on Israel a few years ago?
I think what really probably provoked Israel to strike Iran was a recognition that Iran is generationally weak right now. As a result of exchanges back and forth with Israel over the last few months. Their air defense systems have been significantly degraded. They're not gone, but they're significantly degraded. Also, Iranian intent remains to destroy Israel. They haven't backed away from that at all. So I think the operational timing was right. The strategic timing was probably right as well, given the larger environment. And I think that's probably what led Israel to choose this moment to conduct this strike.
And what advantage does the U.S. bring to entering the war, if you will, with the Operation Midnight Hammer?
Well, first of all, we didn't assist Israel in their strikes on Iran. The many days of strikes that were executed largely by Israel themselves. We only entered to strike the nuclear program to fulfill a long-standing objective of the United States to ensure that Iran does not possess a nuclear weapon. Now, time will tell how thoroughly that program has been set back as a result of those strikes. Ultimately, Tad, I think it's very clear what you want is an Iranian political declaration that they're no longer going to pursue a nuclear element to their program, which they avow now, I have to say. Sure. But we want clear demonstrable evidence that they're not doing that. That would require an inspections regime. That would require a variety of things. I'm neutral personally on whether or not they keep a civil nuclear program. That would be a matter for a strategic decision by the United States. If they maintained a civilian nuclear program, it would just need to be under careful security procedures, careful analysis, careful watchdogs that take a look at it all the time. Other countries have programs like that. They could certainly have a program like that. Again, I'm neutral on it, but we will have an opinion on that. It'll probably come out as we enter negotiations with Iran, which hopefully are going to begin soon.
Well, does this strike and the Israeli strikes preceding it, are there any different than the strikes we see on Iranian nuclear programs going all the way back to the 80s, really?
Well, the U.S. strike on the Iranian nuclear program of a few days ago is the largest, most substantive attack against the heart of their nuclear program that's ever happened. We went right after a number of critical facilities, one of them being Fordo, which has gotten a lot of discussion, as you know, over the last few days. But I think the attack was successful. The degree of success remains to be, analyzed, and we'll get a lot of feedback on that as we complete the battle damage assessment, which is an all-source, all-intelligence discipline review of how well the strike went. You don't know those things immediately. It takes a little time to learn those, but I think we certainly set them back. How far, we'll learn here in the near future.
Right, because other attacks included not just airstrikes, but also like the Stuxnet attack, where you actually have a cyber attack going into the Iranian nuclear program. How does this one, is it more devastating? Is that the overall difference between these past attacks?
I think this gives them, we've done some significant mechanical damage to their system that they're going to have to revisit and repair. Some of it may not be repairable, and they've lost some nuclear scientists, and certainly their knowledge is not repairable, although they do have other nuclear scientists who can probably step up. Again, I go to the point that what you really want from Iran is a declaratory policy here. You need a political statement from Iran about their nuclear program. Otherwise, we're going to have to face the possibility of continuing to restrike the program as they attempt to restart it. Not an ideal situation, but probably a better situation than if Iran possesses a nuclear weapon.
So from your opinion, why did the United States feel like they needed to step in? Could the Israelis not do what the U.S. was able to do, or is there
no
something
one could
more?
do what the United States did in the strike that just occurred. We have unique capabilities that resident only in the United States around the B-2 bomber, the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or the GBU-57 as it's known, as the system is known. Those are uniquely United States capabilities. So strike at the very heart of some of the deeply buried targets. The United States had to enter this. And now what we did, I think, was very reasonable. We struck a very narrow set of targets with very low collateral damage. We didn't attack the Iranian people. We didn't attack Iranian leadership, and we didn't attack the Iranian government. All those things are on the table in the future. And I would think, considering that possibility, is why you saw the Iranian response be so narrow and ineffective.
And what was that Iranian response?
It was, they say, 14 missiles to match the number of bombs that allegedly were dropped in this attack, our strike, fired against Al Udeid Air Base, which was choreographed. If we're to believe reports, it was actually pre-notified. So we were set to defend it. Now, we were set to defend it whether they pre-notified or not.
Sure.
I don't know that the results would have been any different, but I think what Iran wanted to do was conduct the largest possible strike they could without fear of retribution from us. And that centered right at that number. And the Iranians are fond of allegory in their attacks like this, 14 weapons. There's a nuance there. And I think they were trying to do it in such a way that would not provoke a response from us. Had Americans died in this attack, we would be in a very different place today.
So the Iranians are trying to walk a line where they're trying to play to their domestic audience and maybe some other external audiences to show strength, but on the flip side, not escalate the conflict any further with the United States.
Iran needs to de-escalate badly.
Right.
They were badly defeated in this war, whatever they say. They know it. They need to get to a place where bombs are no longer falling on Iran so they can recalculate and decide how to go forward in the future.
So with the Operation Midnight Hammer success, like you said, the battle damage assessments is still going to come out. What does that mean for bringing Iran to the negotiation table? How does the table look now after those attacks?
Well, there were reports that we're going to enter negotiations with Iran about the future of their nuclear program and other things as well, probably. I'll have to see that to believe it, not from our side, but from the Iranian side. The Iranians are much better negotiators than fighters. That's been amply proved down through the years. They will want to negotiate for the sake of negotiations as long as the bombs stop falling. Our position going in should be, we have just dealt you a devastating blow. You're as weak as you've ever been. We now have a huge advantage in these negotiations. But we will have to be aggressive and stay on point to drive that advantage home. We have the ability to do that. The other thing is, frankly, the Iranians are scared of Donald Trump. He's attacked Iran twice. He struck Qasem Soleimani. He authorized this latest attack. No other U.S. president has done that. He possesses enormous credibility about what actions he might take in the future. So that's an advantage that we need to maximize right now. And that's a unique advantage that really derives from the personality of our president.
Well, and you were the CENTCOM commander during the attack on Soleimani, obviously. So how does that compare to this attack? And what, as the current CENTCOM commander, what were the things that he would be dealing with during this operation?
Well, both were very complex attacks. Both revolved on a decision by the president. I think both were solid decisions. I think that what the CENTCOM commander is doing now is what I did then. After the attack, you want to be prepared for the Iranian response so that you can ensure that we minimize its effects so that we preserve the possibility of no further escalation. We were able to do that in January 2020 when the Iranian attack on Al-Assad Air Base largely fell on air, although there were casualties, largely fell on air because we were able to position our forces in a way that minimized their Iranian effectiveness. Same thing in this attack. We were able to position our forces that minimized the lethality of the Iranian strike. So there's some parallels there that can be drawn, important parallels. But the CENTCOM commander, what you want to do is you want to prevent going up the escalation ladder.
Right.
In effect, you're saving the Iranians from themselves. Because if we go up the escalation ladder, we are going to prevail. The Iranians might have some steps they can take on the low end, but all the high end steps belong to the United States.
Right. And how's that work in conjunction with Israel? Because it's also on that ladder. So
I tell you, the same thing applies to Israel. In Iran's current state, they cannot afford to escalate with Israel. Israel holds all the cards. Iran has been largely not terribly effective in attacking Israel. Certainly some missiles have gotten through, but largely the Israeli defenses have held. While on the other side of the coin, Iranian defenses have proved unable to deal with the weight of the Israeli attack.
Right, and right now we're seeing a tentative ceasefire, it's tense, and then a possibility of a 60-day ceasefire, which I believe President Trump noted that the Israelis were in for, that they were willing to do. Where do the Iranians stand on that as we look forward to a possible a multi-month ceasefire?
Well, when it comes to Iran, if you're going to give them a ceasefire, you have to extract something from them. You should not award them a ceasefire just for the sake of a ceasefire. There has to be practical movement forward on our objectives. And being defeated should have a practical effect. The Iranians will seek very hard to avoid that, and they are brilliant negotiators. As I've noted earlier, better negotiators than fighters. So they will seek to drag the negotiations out in time, to talk about the size of the table, to talk about who's going to be in the room, to talk about the weather, to talk about anything except what we want to talk about, which is the cessation of their military component of their nuclear program. And then I think we need to move to their missiles in the region, their support for proxies in the region, and their position on Israel, to wit, it should not exist. We want to get Iranians off that. They are vulnerable now, and if you remember that the primary goal of Iranian statecraft remains regime preservation, I think we have an opportunity here. And again, that opportunity largely hinges on the president's decisions, his two decisions, Qasem Soleimani in 2020 and the recent attack on the nuclear program here just recently.
And with this Operation Midnight Hammer, what's that signal to the rest of the world, as well as just the Iranian regime, that the U.S. is willing to reach out and touch them?
Well, Tad, it signals that we have remarkable capabilities that we can deploy globally. And I'm sure a number of people are taking note of that right now.
With the aftermath of that attack, the current ceasefire, what does that have any play on the relationship between Iran, Russia, China, this kind of axis of these powers?
I don't think particularly, Tad, it does. I think both Russia and China have to be concerned about the effectiveness of our weapons that we employ. I don't think, aside from verbal support, I don't think a lot's going to change in that relationship. Iran's relationship with Russia is purely transactional. They've given them a lot of drones. Russia has given them some technology. I don't think that any actual support will be forthcoming from Russia. And China's been curiously silent on this whole matter.
And very interesting. And the Iranians definitely have less to transact as they continue to suffer these attacks. So with that in mind, has deterrence in the region been reestablished from what we've seen in the aftermath so far?
Too soon to tell, Ted. Too soon to tell. I think we'll know in the days ahead. I think we need to get into negotiations. Again, I point out that negotiations need to have a purpose, and they need to serve our purposes, which are elimination of the Iranian nuclear program. To negotiate just for the sake of negotiations is pointless. That will be the Iranian goal. We need to prevent that from happening.
What does the Iranians still have to counter back with? Do they still have large reserves of missiles, do you think, or rockets? I mean, what do they actually have left?
The Iranians still have probably several thousand short-range rockets and some longer-range rockets that can attack Israel, probably with no more success than what we've seen to date. They could have more success if they chose to attack some of their Gulf partners. And then, though, there'd be a war, a large war, that probably would have regime change in Iran on the table as an end state.
Right, because we haven't seen any major domestic unrest in Iran yet.
We have not.
So as of right now, it seems like the regime is going to be able to weather this recent set of...
It does, but I'll be honest with you. I'm very humble in my ability to predict these things. I don't believe any of the analysts out there saw the fall of Syria occurring as rapidly as it did. So we should remember that, or the collapse of Lebanese Hezbollah. Those things were sudden. And I think we should remember that when we examine what's going on in Iran.
Sure, and in discussing those proxies, in the aftermath, the current ceasefire, Israel still having operations, obviously, in Gaza. What does this mean for the Iranian proxies around the region?
They've been quiet, except for the Houthis. We know they're all in, but I'm unaware that they have started attacks again in the Bab el-Mandeb. I think they're still committed to attacking Israel, but they know if they attack Israel, they'll be hit very hard in return. So the Houthis will be of all the proxies, they're the most independent. So that will probably continue. But proxies in Iraq and proxies in Syria have chosen not to engage. That's a very telling signal, Tad.
And as we look at the overall future as we're coming up on a possible ceasefire or a lengthy ceasefire, how do we actually get to a point where we might have stability in the region, like a lasting peace?
I think it'll take some form of agreement on the Iranian nuclear program to obtain that. And I think it will ultimately take some modification in Iranian behavior. Unfortunately, my judgment is that's still a ways off.
If we're looking at the historical perspective, how would you frame this current conflict? Is this a continuation of years of unrest in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors and in Iran, particularly after the revolution of '79? Or is this really distinctive since the October attack 2 years ago?
I think it's distinctive, not since the October attack. I think it's distinctive because for the first time, Iran and Israel are striking each other directly. That's the new thing. And the second thing is Iran has been thoroughly defeated in this exchange.
Right. Yeah, from the air.
from the air.
So with that in mind, a lasting peace might be able to sustain if there's a broker in the regions. Does the United States play that?
We're probably that
piece?
broker. If anybody's going to be the broker, it's going to be us. First of all, the Iranians have got to agree to negotiate with us directly. We should do away with this third party nonsense as a requirement for negotiations to begin. Yes, that's a possibility. I'm not particularly optimistic, but the circumstances are unique. Again, a lot of it driven by the personality of our president.
Right. Well, and you mentioned the third party negotiator. Who's been playing that role between the U.S. and Iran?
Well, we've
recently?
used Qatar and we've used Oman. I think Qatar right now, but there are a couple of nations in the region that have been useful interlocutors with Iran.
Right, and they're just a mediator.
They are a mediator.
They're
a conduit. I would not
conduit,
even say they're a mediator. They're a conduit.
Right. Yeah, that makes more sense in that case. What about the Israelis? Where do they sit at the table?
I think they're not at the table, and they're not going to be at the table, but they're watching very carefully.
Is there a reason for that, or because they have their own?
I think it's hard to get the Israelis and the Iranians together on anything right now. Maybe at some point in the distant future that could happen, but I think we need to move with very small steps right now. But these could be important steps toward lasting peace in the region.
So to wrap up, what are you looking at as focal points for the next few months within the region?
I think negotiations are important. I think we need to watch how that goes. We need to see if the Iranians are going to keep the truce. My guess is they will try very hard to do that while ceding nothing in negotiations. Therefore, we're going to have to be prepared to put additional pressure on Iran through existing economic sanctions and other means to keep them on task and to get what we want. Now is the time to pursue that goal. The time has never been better.
So possible more attacks if negotiations fail?
I would not take those off the table. I don't think anybody wants more attacks, but I would not take that option off the table.
Well, we'll have to see how those negotiations go, General.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, sir. And that's going to wrap up another episode of What's Really Happening. We held an intriguing discussion with GNSI's Executive Director, retired Marine Corps General Frank McKenzie, about the 12-day war and Operation Midnight Hammer. As always, I'm Dr. Tad Schnaufer, the Strategy and Research Manager here at the Global and National Security Institute. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to our next episode when we find out what's really happening.